Hey, warmer for the hello! Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're going to be joined here in a few short minutes by one of our good friends, Colby Dant, who does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, looking at all things college sports. This time of year, doing a great job on the college baseball front, all 12 months out of the year, taking a look at college basketball and so much more. We're going to chat it up with him about what we've all seen here in the last few weeks with the NBA draft decisions now in the books. We're going to continue to talk about the offseasons that we've seen on the SEC and the Big East as well. I know he is very bullish about what a lot of these Big East teams have done in the offseason, so we'll talk about that. Few teams, few players in general that really stand out to him, and Kentucky adding Milan Memiselovic. Then in the final segment, I'm going to give you guys a recap of the news and notes we saw in college basketball on Friday. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one or two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at Geodan_81. Keep in mind, there's the maybe does not matter. So as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Per usual, I beg with you, I plead with you, do send in these Twitter/X questions because it helps the offseason go by a little bit quicker. And now it is going to be going by a little bit quicker because we are starting to run out of these guys that are out there on the open market and the transfer portal. Like we saw a few transfers on Friday, but still, we are really starting to get a little bit more thin there. We've got a recap that is going to be only a few minutes in the final segment, so those conference preview podcasts, they're going to be getting started up, and I plan on having the first one up probably like Tuesday or Wednesday of next week, so we're within 7 days. The light is at the end of the tunnel, and one thing that you guys can bank on all throughout the offseason, continuing to give you guys great guest segments like the one that we've got right now with our good friend Colby Dant, who does such amazing work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. He's taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball all 12 months out of the year, but on the college experience, it's more than just college basketball. It's college baseball, which is hot and heavy with the road to Omaha going down right now. It's college football. It's hockey when it's in season as well. He and Ryan McIntyre are doing an absolutely tremendous job there. For Kobe, you're able to follow him on the old Twitter/X at the Kobe D altogether. And Kobe, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
You're welcome, brother, and always good catching up, man. Hey, I mean, we're almost in the, well, I guess the World Cup will help us pass over a little bit of the summer, but honoring the final days of college baseball, we're previewing football, talking basketball, but man, you hit that stretch here in a few weeks where you got nothing. You got nothing sports-wise, live sports-wise, so besides MLB, just cherishing what we still have here. But I think the World Cup, and I'm not traditionally a soccer guy, but I do get down with the World Cup, so I do end up watching it as much as I can, so that will help, I think.
Yep, I am right there with you. I do think that the World Cup is going to be incredible this year, but what else is incredible is what we've been seeing here in the college basketball offseason as well, because the NBA draft decisions, they just came to pass, and I thought that we had a really, really good stretch for college basketball over the last few days, because a lot of these fringe players, aside from perhaps Malik Thomas throwing their Allen Graves, it feels like pretty much all these guys decided to stay in school.
No, I think it was a win for college basketball, which once again, I don't know how much you heard, but I'm sure you probably did, knowing you. I heard a lot of NFL scouts for the draft being like, man, it's a bummer. All these players are coming back. Well, the money's too good, and with the uncertainty of where you get drafted, it makes sense. Also, like, I don't know, if it was me, I would tell my son to enjoy college while you can, right? Enjoy that age, because it's special what you got there. So it's a mix of all three of those things, probably a perfect storm. But the main thing is, I mean, with NBA, especially compared to NFL with the guaranteed money, you really want to be a first-round pick. A lot of second-round picks don't even make the roster in the NBA. So not that surprised, but to me, compared to what it was a decade ago, this is a big win for college basketball.
Yep, I'm right there with you, and I feel like the biggest two moves as well were guys that didn't even go back to their own school. It felt like St. John's was one piece away, and I think that Yusufu heading on over there after he was over at Baylor this last season, Tunde Yusufu, 17-plus point per game scorer, heading on over to a system that I feel like fits him like a glove. And then we see Milan Memiselovic, who was arguably the best transfer of all in the entire portal this offseason. He heads on over to a Kentucky team that, boy, oh boy, it felt like they needed a star player.
I feel like with what they've done recently, you can exhale a little bit. Kentucky fans were on DEFCON 5 for a little while there. But Big Blue Nation, I think, can rejoice. We still don't know if Mark Pope is the guy. Like, I think we all want Mark Pope to work there because he played there. You know, I'm no huge Kentucky fan or anything. I just think it's kind of cool when you get the guy who played for you coaching and having success. I think it's a shoe kind of fits thing. But man, that was a rough first year, especially with Calipari doing a little bit of damage the past couple years. And then, it kind of put pressure on Pope that maybe he wasn't prepared for. So this year it was looking really kind of bleak. I think this is a gigantic thing. Because Moreno too. They got Moreno back. They added Wilkins from Furman. We'll see if he can punch up. But yeah, I mean, Kentucky all of a sudden looks like a tournament team again, as opposed to before when you were looking. I think we might have even had a conversation about this, Greg, where we're like, man, they're going to be at the bottom of the SEC. It looked like that maybe 2 months ago.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. It was looking real bad. And how do you take a look at them right now? Because I still don't think that they're on par with Florida. I think that Tennessee has passed them up, but I'm right there with you. I was thinking they were a bottom 4, bottom 5 team in the SEC, and now at bare minimum, I would say top 6.
Yeah, I can't put them at the super top, but I will say that now they look like a tournament team. I mean, providing everyone stays healthy, they look like a team that can compete, and you never know, I mean, Diallo from Washington, I'm intrigued to see how he can do at Big Blue Nation. Wilkins, sometimes you grab the guy from the group of 5 ranks or the mid-major ranks in college hoops, and they whiff. They completely whiff. We've seen it often, I feel like. But we'll see if that can work. But, man, if they hit on all of their production the way that these guys have played throughout their history, and then Moreno takes another step, they got, international kid, IA, I think it is, or something like that. So they should be, if everything hits, I think they're a top 4 team probably, maybe top 5. But we'll see. They got to hit on everything. That's the thing these days where I know you know it from just previewing these teams. When you have just guys that have never played together, continuity is such a huge, huge factor. So can they establish that continuity? But I will say this, it looks a lot more promising. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that compared to 2 months ago. So it makes, I think if you're a Kentucky fan, you just want the hope right now of hey, we could win the SEC or go to the Final Four. And I think that's been reestablished.
Yep, I'm right there with you. As Colby Dant, who does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And I really feel like it's been a great offseason in general for the SEC. We remember that amazing year they had 2 years ago. A little bit of a step back last year for pretty much any other conference. They would have considered that a rousing success. But how do you just take a look at this entire offseason? Because, even South Carolina has had themselves, in my opinion, a good offseason. Georgia maybe didn't add a lot, but you talk about continuity. They've been able to keep that. Tennessee has had a mighty offseason. Florida, they have pretty much the same roster as Walter Clayton from when they won a title 2 years ago. You just go down the list. Texas, Arkansas, just feels like a locked and loaded conference right now.
Yeah, I would say specifically Florida. That's the elephant in the room with everyone who returned. But Arkansas, I would say Arkansas is one that in Texas, they're kind of in the same boat to me as historical coaches in college basketball. Kyle's won a natty. Sean Miller's had good runs before. But can they take that next jump? Because Sean Miller, really, I would say, even at Arizona, besides, I think, was that his first year at Arizona that he went kind of deep? I still think there's some questions on that hire, so we'll see if just loading up the roster will make it work. And with Calipari, I think the game's kind of changed. I'm still shocked to see he doesn't try to add more veterans. He still loves the younger kids. He's gotten a little hip to adding some veterans, I feel like. So those two, on paper, they look great. We'll see if they can mesh all together. I will say, though, that Auburn's one where I don't know. LSU is a complete and utter joke to a certain extent. I mean, if they get a judge in Baton Rouge to pass all this stuff, then all of a sudden they become a contender, I guess. Tennessee, that's one to probably talk. Tennessee is one that has loaded up in the portal and really thrown a lot of money. I was talking about that. I was at the Tennessee college baseball regional in Chapel Hill. Vol Nation was there, and they threw a ton of money into their basketball. Just talking to some of the people there, that is one where you're right. That one seems to be hitting. Nate Oates in Alabama How about one of the big winners, actually going back to what we're talking about, was Tyler Tanner coming back to Vanderbilt, because Vanderbilt's one where Byington, I think, is such a good coach. When they were talking about the North Carolina potentially hiring him, I thought that would have been a slam dunk for the Tar Heels. They had other ideas, but Vandy, I think that's another emergent. And you're right. When you really add this all up, you can make an argument. I thought the Big 12 was the strongest conference a season ago. But on paper right now, when you think about it, they're going to challenge for that top spot, especially if they can hit on some of these teams. Obviously, South Carolina is an interesting one. New athletic director, big year for Lamont Paris. We'll see if that can come together. But I would say the big ones that stand out are Tennessee and Florida, because we've seen them have success. And Calipari and Sean Miller, I think, are notable, but I kind of want to see how far they can go. I know Texas had a little bit of a run last year, but I didn't think it was as they haven't performed as well as some of the rosters have been going back to even Chris Beard and Rodney Terry. So I'm fascinated to see how the whole conference aligns and how it does this year. I still am. Would you say you think coming into the season, if you had to power rank the conferences with everybody returning now and the payday attempts from all these schools, you would project them number one ahead of the Big 12, Greg?
Yep, I would be going with the SEC number one. I just think that the bottom teams in the SEC are better right now than that of the Big 12. I just still have question marks with the likes of a Colorado, with the likes of a Utah. Those are schools that I think are dragging them down just a little bit. And while I like the moves that Kansas State have made, I think that it's going to be a little bit tough in year number one for Casey Alexander. And I certainly think that Cincinnati is going to be in for a good year as well. I just question whether or not they're going to be a tournament team or not in year number one. I don't know how you take a look at that situation, but I think that Jared Calhoun is doing things very, very right in that he's not selling out to go for like some 25-win season year number one. He wants to put a stamp on that program, and he wants to make sure that there's going to be sustained success for Cincinnati, not just sell out in year number one like we saw at Kansas State when they had Jerome Tang, and then after that it just fell off.
Yeah, and I guess you have some of the questions at BYU, even though they're spending a lot. We'll see. So you have a few teams that I guess you would probably say. I do expect Houston to, continue to roll. And getting Thomas from LSU, I think, was a huge get for Houston. I think that can really work. But probably on paper right now, I think you would have to say the SEC. Now, I am interested. I know we talked about this. There's no football for a lot of those Big East schools. So now that they're getting the rev sharing, they're able to spend. Do you think you have noticed, because you hit on St. John's briefly there, do you think the Big East has been a noticeable change from traditionally, based on them, a lot of these schools not having football and being able to pay perhaps more than the market says for these players?
It's like you're reading my mind, Kobe, because I was about to ask you if you felt like the Big East was perhaps the most improved conference here in the offseason, because Marquette actually utilized the transfer portal. We both love chemistry, we both love camaraderie, but in this day and age, zero transfers is also going the wrong way as well. I thought they had a nice offseason. Xavier is spending. Heck, DePaul, they have been just buried in the depths of college basketball for multiple decades. They finally look back. I love what Providence did in the offseason. Tonde Yusufu going to St. John's was big. I know UConn has a solo ball injury, but they're going to be a top 10 team once again. I really think with the Big East, while they might not be the best conference in all of college basketball, I love what they've done here in the offseason, and they might be the most improved conference in the offseason.
I think this is what's fascinating about the sport right now. A lot of people complain about players getting paid and blah, blah, blah. Not like they weren't getting paid for a long time before, but like some people like to pretend like that never happened. I think watching the arms race, whether it's Big Ten, SEC against the other power schools, whether it's just a power school within the ACC or Big 12 or wherever that frankly puts basketball one. Now you have the Big East and some of the WCC schools and Pac-12 now, I guess, because Gonzaga's Pac-12, spending money that they all of a sudden, this is going to be fascinating to follow. You hit on this. I think the Big East has done an unbelievable job hitting the portal way more aggressively than they had. Providence, I know what Miles Bird, he was on my show once. I think that's a smash get for Providence. The Johnnies, you hit on a few, but I mean, they also added Donnie Freeman from Syracuse, which I think is, with Pitino's coaching, could be fascinating to watch. UConn should still be really good. DePaul spending was the shocker. I mean, like that. Even Marquette. How about Marquette? Shaka's using the portal. That's going to be really, really interesting to watch. And here's the problem, though, is I don't know that we've trained the committee / to think this way. You know what I mean? It's going to be fascinating to watch. I believe there's still a lot of corruption in the tournament selection process, whether it's college baseball, whether it's college basketball, whether it's college football. It'll be interesting to see how they grade a non-football conference, really. Like even in college baseball, to give you an idea, folks, if you're not college baseball fans, I thought Oregon was incredibly misseeded. And I think a lot of it had to do with them just being in the Big Ten, which is not a good baseball conference historically. Adding those Pac-12 schools, I think, was a benefit to helping their baseball product. But overall, they've been a terrible baseball conference. But they get the benefit of the doubt, I think, in that room because they're in the Big Ten and they have say. Right? I just think that's something to pay attention to moving forward. because it's just all captivating. This is the craziest time in the history of college sports, I think. Maybe since the first days of, some of these sports being invented. But I think the Big East is loaded. They could push. If everything hits, I am fascinated to see where they would, because they were bad last year, let's be honest. Like, that was a bad year for the Big East. But once again, the rev share didn't kick in. I kept reminding our listeners on my show that next year is going to be interesting to watch. Because, yes, Georgetown doesn't throw any money in their football program. DePaul doesn't even have a football program. Creighton doesn't have a football program. Providence doesn't have a football program. Seton Hall doesn't have a football program. And so on and so on. St. John's doesn't have a football program. So very fascinated to see how this all works out. But that is one that I'm keeping an eye on that I think could push. If they hit on all these guys, I think they could be way better than what we realize. I don't think a lot of people had the ACC as improved as it was last year. So new coaches and hitting the portal, and all of a sudden, I was at ACC Media Days. They made no mistake about they took it more serious, their revenue sports. So clearly it seems to be that's the case with the Big East.
Yep, and I do think that it's so big that the Big East is getting that rev sharing, and you mentioned it. The only reason why the Big East hasn't been miring in mediocrity the last few seasons is UConn has just been absolutely carrying the mail for them, for lack of a better extent as well. Rick Pitino and St. John's, past those teams last year, it was relatively rough for the Big East, and it feels like they are back, and a man that is ever back because he never leaves. That is you, my friend Colby. You're doing such a great job all 12 months of the year. Like I said, baseball, basketball, football, hockey, we name it, you do it. I don't know if you guys have ever gotten into college bowling. That's a sport that I did in college because it's more of a club sport, but you know what? I'm sure that if we would be able to bet on it, you guys would do a great job of finding us money there as well. Love the good people at home. Know what's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, hopefully there's never another COVID because
that was rough.
I mean, we were betting marble races. That was
KBO, baby.
This is how sick I am. I found that to be more entertaining than I realized. And then I was like, why didn't they just continue that? Why didn't they continue to show that? Why isn't there a marble racing TV channel? I'm on Twitter at @DColbyD. I host the College Basketball Experience, College Football Experience, College Baseball Experience, YouTube.com/The College Experience. Check us out, and part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. So you'll catch me all over that as well. Sports Gambling Podcast. Check them out. And appreciate you letting me hop on these airwaves and talk ball, brother.
Absolutely. And with Colby, he is now our aforementioned marble racing expert. So we've got another thing that Colby does an absolutely tremendous job of. He's just a five-tool man right here. He does a little bit of everything and does so also well. And every single time he joins this podcast, lends such great insight. So big thanks to Colby for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Coming next, let's get you guys a recap of the news and notes we saw in college basketball over the last 24 hours. Inside Edge this college basketball season? Well, VSiN experts use CBB Analytics, the most comprehensive college basketball analytics platform in the world. See injury impact, on and off data, clutch time performance metrics, first versus second half splits, and so much more. Utilize the promo code of VSiN, that is VSIN, to get $30 off and find your betting edge over at cbbanalytics.com. That is cbbanalytics, all one word.com. For anyone that is new to VSiN, well, I wish you a friendly hello. This is an attention to anyone that is new to VSiN because you're able to get some free stuff with our daily newsletter. It's a great way to catch up on everything that's happening in the sports betting world. It's delivered straight to your inbox every single morning. VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, strategies for the day's betting menu, and so much more. Sign up for free today over at VSiN.com/newsletter. That's VSIN.com/newsletter, and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That is VSIN.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by Colby Dant, who does such amazing work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, looking at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball all 12 months out of the year. Every single time he joins me, he lends such great insights. Did so once again today. So a big thanks to Colby for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you a recap of the news and notes we saw in college basketball over the last 24 hours. Jan Vide, he was pretty solid over at Loyola Marymount this last season. Began his career over at UCLA, about 12 points, 3 boards, 4 assists per contest. He decides that he is going to be heading on over to Virginia. Now, I don't know if he's going to be seeing a massive amount of time, but he's a 6'6" combo player that last season he was shooting about 32.5% from three-point range. With Virginia, they did a great job keeping a lot of their own here in the offseason, bringing back the Darius Ritter and company. I think that they are going to be very locked and loaded for this upcoming college basketball season. I don't know if I can quite put them on par with Duke or perhaps Louisville with all their spending, but certainly I do think that they're going to be towards the top of the conference. And for Virginia, it's been a really interesting offseason for them because they haven't necessarily added in there the super duper splashy guys, but I think that they've added in their guys that are really going to be able to help them out. Kalu Anya was over at St. Louis, began his career over at Brown. Jurian Dixon is just a great player in general over at UC Irvine, starts off for the Anteaters last season, and then Christian Harmon, he was a double-figure scorer over at Arkansas State last season, so they've added a lot of stake. Maybe not a ton of sizzle, but a lot of guys I think are going to be able to go out there and just be able to be rock solid for this program. Yafat Mufadel, he was over at San Jose State last season. He was averaging about 3 points, 2 rebounds per game as a 6'8", little bit of a big man. He's heading on over to the Youngstown State Penguins, one of my favorite mascots, by the way. And for Youngstown State, it's been an interesting offseason for them as well. I feel like they've added a lot of guys that they just fit the system in general. They're going to be pretty rock solid on defense with Mufadale. He's going to be able to give you some low post protection. Linus Holstrom was a double-figure scorer last year over at VMI. Jermaine Coleman, he didn't necessarily see a ton of time over at St. Thomas, but he's able to stretch the floor. Dom Eskins probably going to have the ball in his hands coming over from Duquesne. Jeff Nowako, who was over at Oklahoma, I think is going to be a nice piece as well. It feels like for Youngstown State, maybe they're not doing the world's greatest job of keeping up with the Joneses in the Rising League, but it feels like one of those teams that I always love to say this, whole is greater than the sum of its parts with them. For South Dakota, this is a solid add. You've got Kajuas Kablikas. He was over at Florida, actually, to begin his career, so absolutely no playing time whatsoever at Florida, but in this past season, he was over at Pacific, and let me be specific, the fact that he was able to give you 5.5 points, 3 assists per game. He was a part-time starter for the bunch, really not a guy that's going to pop it from 3, 28% three-point shooter, and a guy that actually comes over from Lithuania, and I think that this is a good add for South Dakota. We've been noticing that they've been able to find a lot of solid players from the international route, and for South Dakota, you do need to get creative with regards to the way that you're going to be able to find guys via the transfer portal and just in general via recruiting. And for South Dakota, I feel like they've been able to put together a relatively solid offseason. KJ Thomas, he's coming over from UTEP. He should be able to help a little bit more at the point guard spot as well. Cade Kelderman, he was over at Iowa State. He should be able to help this team generate some turnovers. And Melo Sanchez, he was a really good scorer over at Central Connecticut. That's going to be able to give them more three-point shooting pop than what they had a season ago. Someone like a Steph Van Bussel at 6'10" coming over from Duquesne. That's going to help. So lots of balance here for South Dakota. South Dakota has played at a harebrained pace the last few seasons. They have consistently been in the top 15 in terms of total possessions per game. So it's going to be very interesting to see if they continue that style because a little bit more balance, it feels like, this season for them. And then you had Mateo Kofi. He was last season over at UTSA. Meep for the Roadrunners. He, as a freshman, was able to see some relatively good playing time, albeit the Roadrunners were not doing a lot of meeping because they were doing a lot of losing. Comes over from the country of France, 3.8 points, 4.8 rebounds per game. He decides that he's heading on over to NJIT, and NJIT low-key has had a pretty nice offseason. Mario Tatum was a good solid scorer in the backcourt of VMI this last season, and as we know, with the America East, and that'll be the first conference that I preview, by the way, so be on the lookout for that. It is one where you don't necessarily have a ton of NIL or anything like that, so when you're able to get someone like a Kofi that's big, Brendan Oliver, who is a 6'6" combo player over at Canisius, that's going to be all up out as well, so I do like the moves that these guys are making. I don't know if they're necessarily going to be able to throw in the likes of Vermont and UMBC, but I do think that there's a lot of upside here, and I do like the way that things are coming together for them, and things are very much coming together this offseason, and I'm looking at all the news and notes that we're getting in this offseason to get us prepared for what I hope to be is the greatest college basketball season ever. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one or two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at Geodit_81. Keep in mind, LRCM, the me does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. The other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And big thanks once again to our guy, Colby Dant, who does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, for joining me in the last segment. And I'm with you guys every single day on this podcast here in the offseason, looking at the news and notes of college basketball. And we're going to get to you guys those conference previews as well. And then once we get in-season picks and analysis on every single game, every single day. So I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.